All right,
I
we're
mean,
recording. First ever Zoom recorded interview. I've never done this before.
great. I'm so excited for you.
First, I want to say welcome to our first ever Outreach Thursdays, everyone. This is Elaine, and she is a representative of ENC. And ENC, if you didn't know, starting, what was it? Was it this past fall that you started having? Starting this past fall in 2019, Elaine started using our cafe space on Tuesday night for young adult meetings. And we'll get into that. So you guys will be able to see exactly what this ministry does and who it affects and how you can be involved as well, especially during the times that we're experiencing right now. So let's get started. How are you feeling? Are you ready?
I'm doing great. I am excited to talk with you today. What's up?
So I guess the first question will be, tell us what ENC is. What does ENC stand for? And give us a little bit of background of the organization, a little bit of how it was founded, the vision and purpose behind it.
So ENC stands for Every Nation Campus, and it is a campus ministry, church-based campus ministry, founded and birthed out of a family of churches called Every Nation.
Okay.
So that family of churches kind of began in 1994, where a bunch of missionaries were traveling through Asia to serve. And they arrived at the Philippines, and there was a huge revival that broke out where hundreds of students got saved. There was a lot going on there. I won't go into it, but essentially God moved, and there were hundreds of students that needed family. They needed discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
And so these missionaries were faced with decision to on how to decide how they're going to give them the next step after they're receiving Jesus as their Lord and Savior. So one of the missionaries stayed to become kind of the interim pastor for the new church that was birthed out of that mission trip.
Mm-hmm.
And while the rest of the missionaries continued on their mission trip throughout Asia.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward to that, it just started growing and growing, and it just became sort of a catalyst for what these missionaries were really sent to do and what God has been birthing in their hearts. And so 3 leaders from that mission trip, Steve Merle and Rice Brooks, as well as Phil Bonasso, they came together and was like, I think they went back to their church, and the church, I shouldn't say, maybe we'll skip that part, but essentially they've decided that for the interest of their mission and the need in the nations, they were going to kind of organize their mission. Was at the basic level at that time, it was still just the beginning of what is now what we understand as our core mission and value, which is to establish churches everywhere in the nation, all over the world, as well as reaching the campus and going to nations as well to serve the nations. So those were sort of the key factors that they agreed upon as sort of what it meant to be an Every Nation church. And they saw a strategic significance in in reaching the campus, right? They saw that that's where the new leaders of society are coming from. That's where just the future is,
Like
and
the
also
young type of format.
yeah. And that's also where the most malleable people that you could ever meet is from the campus, and the ones who are open to hear and willing to do whatever it takes for their passion. And so catching them young sort of has been a strategic thing that they saw happening, but also scripturally we see young people being kind of the main workforce to labor for the gospel.
How does that tie into you? Like, so I know a lot about you, but our congregation doesn't. So
right.
how does that tie into what you're doing out here? And what campuses are you working on out here?
Yeah. Well, I went to Cal Arts, which is right across the street from you guys. And I studied as an artist. And when I went to Cal Arts, I already knew that I was going there for a reason. And I knew it was beyond just artistic endeavors.
Right.
I just didn't know what that meant, you know? I just knew that my life was meant to honor God. And to point others to do the same. And I was thinking, okay, so if I'm going to be an artist, then I'm going to do that. I'm going to use my art to glorify, honor God, and also point people to Him.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't as I had expected. I think I was a little bit culture shocked coming into Cal Arts. Mm-hmm. Where I saw just like real darkness and resistance to the gospel, or just anything that represented tradition, especially Christianity. And so I wanted to figure out what that meant for me, but at the same time I wanted to find community there, and I couldn't find anything that was visible. And so that was one of the triggers, I think, for me, was that I couldn't believe that I was the only Christian on campus in what is generally well known as I thought it was a conservative kind of part of Los Angeles. And I just couldn't find kind of any refuge in a place of what felt like persecution or rejection because of who I was, and who I served, and who I represented, and who I did work for. So I grew up in an Every Nation church, and I've been discipled in an Every Nation church, and it was just how I knew how to exist, which is that, okay, well, I know that part of my discipleship is that I'm not supposed to just keep all this good stuff to myself. God's good news.
Share it.
Yeah, we're supposed to share it. People should have access to it, and that's also kind of what God did when he became Lord of my life. Is that I understood really early that I wanted everybody to have a chance to know a very real God, and I felt like people somehow didn't know. Because I didn't know, even though I grew up in the Christian church, you know? Yeah, so it was really, that was sort of kind of the foundation in terms of my testimony. He did something miraculous in my life where he saved me, changed me for the better, and for freedom, and for joy. And it was so opposite to the life that I was living, where I thought that I had created a life where I had joy and that I had freedom, but instead I found myself not really having any of those. And realizing that that was my real reality, that's when I realized I needed someone outside of me to save me from myself. When Jesus came into the picture for me, I had already given up. I was like, I'm completely failing at getting my life together. Everything that I thought I knew wasn't panning out, or just finding out that I was failing, I guess, at fulfilling my purpose. And then not fulfilling it made me feel incapable of living my best life. And that made me really sad. and insignificant, undervalued, overlooked, invisible, not contributing to the world at large, and
No
no worth. And so he placed worth in me when I decided to surrender what I thought I had a handle on. When I gave what I knew I was holding on to him, he started to place a vision for my life that I didn't know I wanted. And so he highlighted art to me. I never intended to pursue art. Long story short, Jesus changed my life. He led me to apply for Cal Arts. I got in out of a miracle because my portfolio was made just in the last year, and I couldn't possibly compare to the lifelong artists that have applied there. I got in, and I just knew that God had a mission for me on that campus. And I only knew two things in my discipleship: that my life was meant to honor God in everything that I do in it, and to point others to him. Mm-hmm. And that's where I started. And that's sort of the foundation of like my reason for making art, how I made art, as well as the relationships that I was developing on campus, even though there was sort of that initial kind of rejection because of who I was and who I represented. So I was looking for community, couldn't find anything, but I still wanted to make my time at Cal Arts worth it. And so when I did, what I did was I used a tool that my church has given us. It was kind of new at that time, but it was called the God Test. And it was a set of 10 questions to allow you to have a listening conversation with another person who believes similarly or maybe not at all like you. And I just listened. I just went out there and found people, asked them if they would be willing to sit down and allow me to interview them about their opinions about God. And then partially, I wanted to know if my perception of the people on campus were true, if they really hated me or that they really hated God, or like what was the deal? You know,
where are they coming from? Like, what's their perspective on all of this?
Yeah. I didn't understand why they were so hateful and dismissive towards it, or any artistic work that was related to Jesus, or inspired by it.
There's a lot.
Yeah. So through those conversations, I found out that I wasn't making it up. There's some real trauma. There was some real issues that they were going through, legitimate reasons that they had to disregard and dismiss faith. And then I asked God what to do with that. And in those moments of just sincere listening and conversation, I got to share the gospel. And some of them responded and some of them didn't. But at least there was a relationship that started to form where it was no longer, this is Elaine, like he's trying to convert you, you know. It was no longer about that, but it's like, oh, Elaine is a person who has, has faith, who does make work that matters, and she's not out to get me. You know what I mean? Like we
She cares about
became.
me. She wants to establish a relationship with me. And hey, wait a minute. She is a Christian, but she's not forcing it upon me. But somehow I'm interested in how she's navigating through her Christian walk.
Yeah, we started to find a middle ground, I think, and we just continued developing that relationship. And I was just trusting God that those relationships. One of my pastors constantly tell me that discipleship is relationship, and the weight of truth must land on a foundation of strong relationship, and if it doesn't, it means nothing. You know, like no one's listening if they don't trust you, and people are so distrusting these days, you know. So I essentially used that vehicle, followed the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, and he gave me an idea to basically use that tool as a foundation for my thesis show for CalArts. So I asked for permission from my peers, my classmates, as well as faculty, because we have to basically agree, discuss, and continually critique and develop this work throughout my years at CalArts. So lo and behold, I was given permission to basically, in Christianese terms, evangelize and disciple people, right? That was the essence of my project, which culminated to a show, and just had an opportunity to converse, discuss, continue to discuss like these controversial topics, and talk about questions, asking questions, listening to one another, growing, and breaking down these barriers of tolerance or anger or defensiveness, but creating a safe space to talk about things that are difficult. And in doing so, in pursuing a genuine relationship with lost people, I was able to introduce God to them the best that I knew him as, the one who's real and the one who cares, and not one that they've maybe had bad experiences with or by or at least his people. So yeah, I thought I was gonna go out, graduate, and make artwork like this, my show, where I'm facilitating these conversations and people are hearing the gospel, and people's, lives change, etc.
But God had something different.
He definitely did. January of my graduating year, he gave me a vision for something beyond just art, and that he asked me to stay at Santa Clarita and to continue doing what I was doing for a longer term. And he was giving me a vision for artists and how the world now is being impacted by these millennials, these creatives, in a way that we've never seen in history. Their impact it reaches all over the world. And even now, as we're in COVID, quarantine time, a lot of the content that we're consuming are by creatives, and they have a lot to say.
Yeah.
And he was daring me to consider, what if these young people are transformed by his gospel, and they go off and do what they are talented and skilled to do, but for his glory. And how, like, it's like a whole new level of gospel reaching that I would not have even invented or thought about, but something new that is beyond what we've seen happen even in scripture, but only hinted at, you know?
I like the term gospel reaching.
So I was interested in that. Like, I think initially my heart is for artists, but young people all the same.
Yeah.
And then even when after I got trained at missionary school in Nashville, when I got back, God immediately turned my thoughts towards COC, and I started praying for COC. I was like, wow, like, I've never been at COC, never met anyone who studied there. So I started praying for COC pretty soon afterwards, asking, like, there must be a way to bridge the two, because it couldn't possibly be just coincidence that they're so close to one another, but there's no connection at all.
Right.
So I wanted to ask God about what that meant. So anyway, so here we are, that was in 2015. Right now it's 2020. In 2019, last year, I got connected with you guys, and the vision for Santa Clarita got even bigger than just artists or Cal Arts, but the larger young adults. Sorry?
Citywide.
Yes, citywide, Los Angeles wide, right? But specifically in Santa Clarita, I was starting to meet all these young adults in my kind of first 4 years as a campus missionary, and a pattern in their complaints have emerged, which is community. They don't feel like they really belonged, or if they belonged somewhere, it was too small, or not giving them what they need, maybe. Like, they're looking for something else.
A lack there of a community to support our young people here, especially those who are probably graduating, like from Cal Arts. And I believe you told me once that they do want to stay out here in the Valley, but there's really no place for them here right now.
No. I mean, living expenses alone, way too expensive for an artist. So, but also just opportunities for them to even express who they are, like, constantly, just within the Cal Arts community. There's constant conversation about how they feel ostracized going to the grocery store. Like, they feel so different. They're treated differently because of the way that they
Cal Arts.
Yeah, because of the way that they express themselves, and they're different. And like, within that community, they feel alienated by Santa Clarita. So they're really only at Cal Arts for a short period. And you should know, I've already told you, 35% of the students at Cal Arts are international students. Approximately another 20% are from out of state. And they're there for 4 years. And then afterwards, they go on doing amazing things that affects the whole world. From Los Angeles, they affect culture and change. And I would even dare to say that similarly, our young adults at COC do the same. They go on to attend prestigious CSUs, universities in California and elsewhere. But this is their home. This is where they get the foundations This is the best time to allow God to penetrate their hearts, and yet there's no community that gives them that in a way that is welcoming,
not intimidating,
the way that they could receive it, and so that's part of what I wanted to do a little bit, as best as I can, creatively cultivate a community for young adults in Santa Clarita, beginning with those campuses, to engage them with the gospel, right? Establish them in the faith, equip them with the tools that I've got so that they could live out a lifestyle that pursues Christ passionately, as well as live in his commissioning, and then sending them out, empowering them to go and make disciples in whatever environment, capacity, talent that they have.
Right.
And so I dream of my role as a missionary in Santa Clarita is to make real disciples with as many students as I can, teach them how to also make disciples themselves, and to take these tools and a genuine relationship with God wherever they go, so that they can continue doing that and multiply. So never to even keep them to myself or to keep them in Santa Clarita, but the goal has always been the nations.
Build up and send out.
Yeah. So that's sort of the vision. To teach, to introduce people to a real God, and to send them out to share the real God with others. So
I love it.
Yeah.
So, okay, tell us about, so yes, you got in contact with us last spring, spring of 2019, right? It was January 2019 is when we got in contact with you, right? Or was that?
Probably summer.
Was it summer?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Time smushed for me. So I do, yes, I remember that. So you were getting together with all the different churches in the area, trying to get a feel for if they would be able to help you with a project that you wanted to start as soon as school started in the fall of 2019. Can you give us a little bit of info on that and tell us how fall of 2019 went?
Yeah. When I believe there was 9, I reached out to as many Christian community in Santa Clarita as I could and was introduced to. I had about 9 churches that responded. And I was responding to a need, which is young adults needing community. That they're attending, most of these students, because there's only 2 campuses on at Santa Clarita in addition to Masters.
Right.
Those 2 campuses are where the students in Santa Clarita go. So they're freshmen, they're attending, but they don't know how to connect, who to connect with. And CalArts at least doesn't really have a Christian presence, except us, ENC there. And we hadn't really attempted at that point to start anything at COC yet. Mm-hmm. But I had talked with Dave Volson, who is a young adult pastor at Real Life Church. And he was telling me that they were on the verge of basically pulling out of COC. And I felt like I arrived just in time to say, wait, wait a second. Don't pull the trigger yet. Just like, let's,
it was
don't
God's
push
timing.
right. They've been on that campus for years. Their investment and their relationship on that campus is invaluable to ministry, and to just pull out and for someone else to start from scratch is
It would
hard,
be a waste of resources.
and waste of resources.
Right.
Yes. So I was like, I wonder if there's a way that I could continue and revive what you had at COC. So I had said, I talked to my pastor, my leaders, and to kind of like get their wisdom on this, because I wasn't just thinking like, oh, I'm going to take over the real life young adults ministry. Like, no, that's not, that's not what I came to do, but with a larger vision for the other young adult communities in the Valley. So what if I thought this overlaps, where these young adults could get to know one another, spend time with one another, grow with each other, and develop sort of like a united young adult community where we make disciples. So be disciples and make disciples. So that was sort of an interesting venture to try to unite different churches with different backgrounds a little bit, and a little bit of different doctrines, but with similar hearts to reach the young adults, the next generation, and to no longer overlook them and just like let time pass until they leave their parents' house, you know? What a time to instill truth in them in the way that maybe they haven't experienced or heard before. So I tried. I attempted to and I would say there were some wins during that time, where we saw people definitely stepping up to become leaders, trying out their leadership skills like in a way that they haven't done before, in their own smaller kind of communities. I would even say that I'm really happy about some of the relationships that were made. There were overlaps between the churches, the young adult relationships. So even though some of them no longer attend ENC, they're attending each other's events or community things.
Strong relationships.
Yeah, they definitely built strong relationships. And I think if it wasn't for ENC trying to unite these different groups in the fall, that would not have happened. And these students would some of them would have continued to not have had access to community the way that they do now. So really proud about that. I'm really grateful that was I think a good investment to put time into. But also it led to other relationships that are now my main core group of leaders and students that I'm discipling and equipping to be even stronger disciples. So some of those students have since kind of moved on, which is fine. But also now we are continuing to engage the lost. We're continuing to equip new students to become disciples and to disciple others. And that's been continuing to grow even through this quarantine season. We've never had more time in the years that I've been doing this to quickly instill the discipline of Christian lifestyle into these students.
That's
And they
amazing.
and they love it and they want it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I can't ask for more.
They're
Than having,
prioritizing their time right now. They know exactly, like, this is, if I have the time, might as well just fully invest.
yeah. So I'm hopeful that as we continue to invest in these young leaders, that they would be ready to take next steps for the coming fall, when hopefully we'll have better access to campus and be able to engage new students again. Another win from last fall, one of my favorites for sure, is the revival and the continuation of coffee outreach at COC and then extended over to Cal Arts. That was one of our main ways to engage the campus, and we developed really strong rapport with the campus, with administration as well as students on a weekly basis. We were reaching 100 students a week, new students, inviting them, getting to know them getting to know us. And some of those students that we met through those coffee outreach has continued to engage with us throughout the year. So pretty happy about that. I see some fruit in that area, and I can't wait to continue doing that again. Maybe, hopefully, prayerfully in the fall. Yeah.
So church, how we've helped ENC and how we've helped Elaine is we offer up our cafe for her to host Bible studies, community groups on Tuesday nights at around the same time that we have our high school impact. And Thursday nights, she will do the same thing, but do it on campus at Cal Arts for the students at Cal Arts. She gives the leaders, she gives everyone full reign to make the best decisions for their roles. They cook together, they'll make meals together. They have really serious Bible studies. They bring in different speakers. And yeah, and then we also help support her with the campus coffee ministry, Coffee and Bagels. So yeah, that's how we've been supporting Elaine so far.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing that. I mean, the space alone, I'm even imagining coming fall, if we're not allowed on campus, like we would need a third place to commute to meet. So I'm imagining that we would again use your space, as
Depending
well
on
as
like what the rules are.
depending on the rules. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like really grateful for that. Looking forward to see how we could utilize your space again. And really grateful for your participation with the coffee and bagels, because giving out free food and drinks to students piles up. But it's also really interesting that for every dollar that we spend, we are for sure reaching at least 1 to 2 students. And so that seems like a really small investment for a really long-term fruit that lasts.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I love it. How can we be praying for your ministry right now?
Gosh, creative solutions for the fall, or even the summer.
Yeah.
As well as, sorry?
It's coming up fast.
Yeah. As well as anxiety that students are having right now. It's never been higher. people who are graduating and not experiencing their graduation, freshmen who are, expecting a freshman year and they may not. The uncertainty of how things are going to play out are causing a lot of anxiety. So if you could pray for
our young people,
overall young people, anxiety and the way that they're going to transition throughout the rest of 2020.
Right.
Telling people about our ministry to young adults might be helpful. Like if you know anyone who's looking for community, who's looking for a group of young people to grow their faith with. I know it's kind of tricky when parents tell kids who to go follow or whatever, but maybe it'll work. I don't know.
Or maybe they're going to be watching this.
Maybe. Yeah, so we're going to be producing some continuing gatherings, digital gatherings online, and maybe depending on what they allow us to do, we might do some meetings in person as well, either at the beach, park, etc.
Yeah.
Throughout the summer. That's kind of the immediate need is exposure. So if they could go and help expose ENC to as many young adults as possible, that would be really helpful at the moment. We definitely need prayer constantly, consistently. We've taken a pause, but we've been doing bi-monthly prayer calls, and we had some prayer walks in the last semester. So if they're interested to pray regularly with us, they can definitely contact me about that. And as well as giving to our ministry to help send me to Santa Clarita to keep me there and to continue reaching the young adults of our valley.
It's so good to see you. I miss seeing you and talking to you. I mean, like, I have talked to you a lot recently, but like, yeah, I miss meeting with you in person and seeing your group here on campus on Tuesdays, and yeah.
I miss you. I miss seeing your people too. Like, it's really cool to see them pass by and the overlap. And just like, I think the overall atmosphere, like you and Steven have been a great anchor for me at Santa Clarita this last year. And so really grateful for your support, your encouragement, your enthusiasm for young adults to hear the gospel. That's been really boosting for me and my soul. So thank you so much for you and your congregation. Your continued support is so necessary so that we could share the gospel with the next generation. So thanks.
Oh my goodness, this like concludes it. This is the end.
No.
All right, guys, so we're going to be signing out now. Thank you, Elaine, so much for sharing your heart, your vision, and your goals for our valley and the young people. And if you guys are ever interested in reaching Elaine, her contact information will be right here at the bottom of the screen. And we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next Outreach Thursdays. Bye, guys.
Yeah, bye.
All right, how do I stop recording? Ah!